starting still, and we're live. All right.
All right. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. And thanks for being here today. This is Sean Wander here with my partner, Mitchell German, with ControlWriter Software. And this is a special session. This is going to be really interesting. And I hope, actually, I'm sure, but I'm hoping that all of you are going to get the most value out of this. We had an interesting idea, just in case you didn't get to read the details of the email and just registered. You know, we have a lot of training that we're going to be doing, and you know, typically when products are created, obviously the training comes in different forms and different components, and there are a lot of videos that are sort of shot in a vacuum with nobody seeing it. And in addition to everything else that's going to be coming along as part of the offer and conversion control package, we figured, well, you know, rather than just Mitch and I being in a room recording some training that not everybody's going to see till later, we thought we would open it up so that literally you folks can look over our shoulder, participate in some Q&A, and contribute to what you might want to see us cover. So this is going to be the first session, and I just want to clarify that this particular session today is not going to be for some of you that have purchased the original offer control package and are used to the hot seat format with that Q&A. Those are going to be coming as well. This is just bonus. This is something in addition to that that's going to go into the core training area, and literally instead of us creating it ourselves, we thought we would invite you in to look on with us. So today's training is going to be focused on the core elements, which have been updated in the new version of Offer and Conversion Control, but it's also going to be an opportunity for us to pretty much dive deeply into these core elements specifically. What we're going to do is we are going to take questions throughout, and we're going to try to stay focused on the training because that's most important, but stick around because there will be plenty of time in the end for you to ask a question on any part of the software, not just related to the core elements. And if we do see some relevant questions along the way as it relates to the core elements, we will certainly try to take those questions and pick up that subject. So, Mitch, quick intro, and then we'll
the first thing I mentioned is thank you to David for alerting me that the camera was fixated on me while you were talking, Sean, and we corrected that almost just about a minute ago. So that brings up the idea that the fact that we're using Webinar Jam, which uses the Google Hangouts, and there, among things, is the ability to lock in on the wrong camera, so to say. There's also the issue that there's delay for people who are familiar with Webinar Jam, 30 seconds to upwards of a minute from when we're speaking and seeing stuff to when you're hearing us. So what you're hearing me say right now, I actually said about 35, 40 seconds ago. So there's that issue. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into the software. Most of the time we're going to be zoomed in on the software, talking about the software, and we've turned on the chat so that you'll be able to give questions, comments as we go through. If there's something you need clarification on, please chat them out there so we can address them as we're going. But remember, you are asking a question about something we spoke about 35 seconds earlier. So just be aware of that kind of like weird. You're going to be asking it, saying a chat and be like, okay, we got a question here, but it has to do with something we spoke about, a minute or two ago, potentially, or longer.
Right.
Yeah, but we're excited about this, and we'll get this just rolling, I think.
Absolutely, and again, and just so you know, this training will be available. There's not going to be a replay of this in terms of a replayed webinar, but this training, of course, is going to be available in your member portal, so you'll be able to access this at any time under that product training. It'll be separated, obviously, by sections and by tabs as we continue to fill this out. And this is, again, just in addition to all the other training that's going to be coming. So we're going to focus on the core elements for training, but the very first thing I want to cover, and Mitch, I think I'm just going to have us pull the software up, and pretty soon
I've got both ready to go here.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I'll just store
it. Software, but we've been getting a lot of questions, understandably, on especially for those that have purchased the original offer control back in February and have been kind enough and smart enough to take advantage of the deeply discounted upgrade offer for the enhanced offer and conversion control package. So the very first thing we're going to do is actually talk about how to use those two effectively and what the differences are. So, Mitch, do you have the original offer control up yet, or? Got both of them. Okay, so we'll get off me for the most part. Just the most important thing I want to mention, and the most obvious and probably the most valuable, is just to note that originally, and I won't bore everybody with the details of the launch as much as juicy gossip may excite some people, suffice it to say that it was very difficult to get everybody on the same page in the time frame that we wanted it between the February and March and April time frame. Some of you may remember that what had happened around February, immediately after we had done this early launch of Offer Control, was that Mike and Andy had launched Webinar Jam. And Webinar Jam just took over like a storm. And that's great. And for those of you that own Webinar, that use it and like it, Webinar Jam that is, then that's fine. But what ultimately happened is we were originally planning on taking the Offer Control package to a broader launch at that time and adding to it. But what happened was there was just a little bit too much gap, and what we didn't want to do for everybody else was continue to hold out from delivering all the content that we had planned and the enhancements along the way. So we delivered the Offer Control package as promised, everything that was purchased in that February offer at the $297 three-payment price or the one-time price of $247. That was all delivered, and along with some actually 2 bonus sessions in addition to that. And remember, the package had sold for as much as $997 way back into the end of last year. But long story short, what we did was we had all these enhancements and we had all this new training that we wanted to add, and we decided to put that into what was the current Offer and Conversion Control package. So in addition to the software adjustments that we're going to show you, there's going to be first and foremost a lot, and I do mean a lot, of additional training that is part of this Offer and Conversion Control package. I don't want to give a time frame, but I could tell you that on a monthly level minimum, and more than likely on a weekly basis, you're going to notice additional content. We're going to be having live webinar training sessions, the hot seats, all those interactive things. The other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down certain popular launches as they happen so that you can see what actually goes on and how those fit into the framework of the software, because it's a really good exercise to, even if you're not part of the launch and you don't know the inner details, to be able to look at it from afar and understand the breakdown of why those launch mechanics work. That's the power of the software and the process. So suffice it to say, the training is going to be bumped up significantly, and we wanted to make sure that anybody who had purchased the original Offer Control package, because you already have the software, that you have the benefit of really just getting early access at a super, super discounted price. And again, we thank each and every one of you who's taken advantage of that, and I'm sure you're going to be satisfied as we move forward. Now, as for the software itself, we're going to pull the software up. I'm not sure if it's seeing me right now, Mitch, or...
Now it's on the software.
Is it on the software now? Okay.
I just had to click in there, the camera, now that...
Okay, so right now, this is the original Offer Control software that you're looking at. And rather than go down and look at the mechanics of each right now in this training session, because I want to make sure we get into the core elements, what we'll do is in Q&A, we'll certainly take questions on the differences, and sort of organically in the process, you'll start to see the differences as we jump between the 2 versions. But what I want to emphasize is that the new software is not meant to throw away Offer Control, the original. They are meant to be working in tandem. Now, the one thing that is substantially similar is the core elements. What we've added are 2 additional elements to the core elements in the Offer and Conversion Control version, the later one, but the rest of them are the same. And also the Influence tab is the same under the positioning side, which is on the left.
Well, the story, and
the story as well. So
the 3 tabs that have not changed, essentially, and we'll see there is one change here, is the core element, story, and influence have remained largely the same. The communication, we'll discuss why, and it's pretty obvious the significant difference, but where it's much of a broad approach for your whole entire campaign, the new version.
And we'll back in as we go through the training. We'll talk about where you'd want to go back and forth through the others, and just make your notes. But they are most definitely 2 independent programs, and they each have their purpose as part of the offer and conversion process. So the software changes, again, on the positioning side, few of those tabs have stayed the same, but one of them is different. What we essentially did, in fact, we've got the other one open, so let's just toggle between the two.
Right, so this is the original offer control core elements. If I toggle over to the offer and conversion control core elements, you'll see that this line right here, the third line down, was added. It's needs and wants. And we'll discuss exactly what this is, but essentially what does the consumer need, and what do they want, and what do they think they need essentially? What is it they desire in this whole thing of buying your product or getting an offer? So, and we added that distinction, which adds a very important layer to thinking through your core elements. Again, story's the same. We brought, because when we're doing the training, anybody who participated in those live sessions that we did, we saw that the core elements, the objections, were a major part of what we focused on. We tended to focus on the core elements of the story and the objections specifically. So what we did was we broke out objections into its own category entirely, so that you can now focus on different categories of objections and address them specifically, jump into different areas of objections and say, how do I answer this objection? How do I answer this objection? And really be a little more nuanced and drill down in terms of how you handle objections. And then obviously they're not in the influence tab anymore. So if you have the individual offer control, there's objections over here. And then the more substantial difference comes on the right-hand side, where if I jump back to offer control, and this is important because everybody should have both versions, because offer control is included with the offer and conversion control package. So the Teach, Transform, Transact, this is very much based on Mike and Andy's approach to largely building their launches, and we saw that you can get the video genesis breakdown that all breaks out the whole thing in offer control. It's available to you, and it also, the way they'll specifically break down an individual video as well. So this is very much about a very specific approach to communicating an offer. Their Teach, Transform, Transact.
Right. When you're actually getting into the nitty-gritty of the message itself. So, for example, if we go back into communication, when you look at the Teach tab,
right. So, where do you want me to be? If you want me in the other one,
it's supposed to stay in offer control.
Yep.
Yeah. So under communication, when you're going into the Teach tab, this is where it's actually talking about the message elements and the core components of what you're going to need in the various stages of the messages that you're putting out. This is where you're generating the key elements of that message. Going into, and that's true for both the Teach, Transform, and the Transact tab. Right. In offer and conversion control, what you'll notice, of course, in addition to the changes on the left, is up top, we have changed the sections to position control and funnel control, because funnel control and offer and conversion control represents how you are going to be executing the campaign itself. What are the elements that you want to make sure you are including as you put all this to use? So starting from the very beginning, which is lead generation, which starts essentially with your very first ad. Lead generation is going to have all of these different elements that you're going to want to consider. You're going to want to consider your frame. You're going to want to consider your headline and hook. Think about a point of intrigue. Making notes about whatever visual elements you're going to conclude. And again, we're going to talk about this in great detail in other trainings, so I don't want to spend too much time now. I'm simply pointing out the differences between the two programs.
But one of the more important things you'll notice as you work through the funnel control section, because until we get to that training, they do have the software, is you'll see that there are the conversion points. And this is, if you watch the video we did, the promotional video, we talked very much about the idea of a conversion point, and this is very unique, deep thinking about the sales process that's going to be a part of the trainings and as part of the software moving forward over the next few weeks, number of weeks. And you'll see that there's conversion points under lead generation and under the transaction as well, where you've got your quick sale, which would be your initial fast $7 sale that you would try and get them to make, then your primary product, which is the actual product, the main thing you sell, your main sale that you want to get to, which leads to a conversion point. Alternate offer over here is really for a down sale. What are you going to offer them if they decide not to take up your primary sale? And then we put in, and there's all substantially different, similar, is upsell 1, upsell 2, upsell 3. And the idea is that they buy your primary sale. Now I get to think through how I'm going to communicate my upsell to them, and if they buy that, a second upsell to them potentially. Then we have retention, which walks you through, you think through stick strategies, referral programs, communications and emails. It helps let you work through that entire brainstorm, and back end as well through the different things you want to be thinking about. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Today we're specifically going to be focusing on the core elements. So I think it's time to jump into those and get going.
Absolutely. So, and again, if you have questions, folks, although the group is not seeing all the chatter at this particular moment, we will open up the chat a little bit later on. But for now, we are seeing your questions. So if you have questions, things you want to make sure that we cover in this session, please don't hesitate to write them now, because we are addressing them and collecting them along the way. So, starting with core elements, again, this is for those of you that were in Offer Control and have seen some of training and the hot seats where we spent some time working on these. You understand just how important it is to really start here in the core. These core elements represent essentially the foundation for not only the messages that you're going to be putting out as part of your launch and your product promotions, but really it's a key understanding of your entire brand and really how you're positioning yourself as an individual, along with your products, and as a company. This is where you are really getting the strategic clarity on who you are, who you're talking to, why you're doing this in the first place, and of course, what makes you different. So taking it right from the top, let's just talk left to right and all the way down. So starting very much with the core of the product, having an understanding of specifically what it is that you're selling, whether this is a product or a service. And when we say product, this is not where you're spelling out each and every one of the features in that particular section. This is just getting an understanding of what your product is called, what it basically offers, and what it's doing, what it's doing for your consumer base.
Now, this is a foundational description. It's a foundational, just put your mind around exactly what it is you're offering to your consumer. It's very, very straightforward. This is my product. Kind of, it's not even necessarily what it does, because we're going to talk about that as we move further down. This is just what it is. It's a tire, whatever. I sell a tire. Okay,
right.
We'll use tire as an example, so we can make it a little more real, right? I got a special.
Sometimes you're not even sure which product you're offering yet, and so this is just a chance to get clarity on. Yes, I'm going to be offering a 7-video course on gardening at home. Whatever the case may be. This is just where you're getting total clarity on the product and what is offered.
Right.
The consumer is specifically, who you are targeting, and ideally you want to make this as specific a group as possible. It's not necessarily where you focus in on pure age and gender demographics, although you could certainly do that. We don't want to put rules on how we brainstorm the details of any of these areas. We just want to offer suggestions as to what may help keep you focused and what's going to be more effective as you work through the process. So in this area with this consumer tab, you're really looking at just identifying who your primary consumers are. So for example, if your target is the internet marketing niche or the online marketing world, you may want to write that. If you are a doctor or a chiropractor and you're targeting a brand new pain treatment, you want to probably identify a certain type of client who has seen you with a specific type of pain. So these are all the areas where you want to get as specific as possible. And related to that is the tab actually right underneath that, which is the circumstance. In addition to who they actually are as a consumer, understanding what circumstance has brought them to this potential buying platform is really important, because ultimately, you are not just addressing the needs of the consumer themselves, but the circumstances that they're in. And Andy, you've probably heard him talk about this many times, is that you're not just solving a problem, you are solving the circumstance that problem is surrounded by.
I'm just getting back to, for instance, to walk through just a very basic example. Imagine we're selling tires and special off-road, on-off-road, off-road, on-road type of tires, something very unique for people who like to do some of the off-roading kind of back to dirt road kind of stuff. So the consumer in that case is probably going to be someone in the right age range. They own maybe an SUV, they own Jeeps. In other words, right there you would narrow down who your potential consumer is, and the circumstance these people might be in is they need to change the tires every time they want to go. They want to go off-road and they got to lift the car, they got to remove the tires, put the new tires on. That takes a lot of time, and it's constantly changing tires. So I'm making this up, but just so you can see that we would already start to dissect a little bit of how we're going to market to them by just understanding who we're marketing to, and now already what it is about my tires that would be immediately beneficial to them. Because if we could jump over to solution in this case, I'll let Sean define it first.
And again, the solution gets into a little bit more about what solution you are actually providing in answer to those circumstances and those consumers. So where the product was literally just spelling out what the product was, what it consisted of, the solution is what is it that you're actually solving. And so, just to take a simple retail example, obviously if you're selling toothpaste, you're providing the solution of clean teeth and fresh breath for a sustained period of time and help fighting against cavities. So getting very clear on the solution that you're providing, specifically how it relates to the circumstance and consumer. And actually, Mitch, that's something it's probably worth repeating over and over again. When you're looking at each of these things, so many times in the past, before we really put this framework together with Mike and Andy and just really talk through some of these higher level concepts, people had a tendency to look at each thing when they sort of identified it individually. And what the real breakthrough was for all of us is not just the individual elements, but the relationship between the elements, especially as it relates to the elements of your product or service and the consumer side of things. So again, understanding not just what solution you're providing, but specifically tying that solution into how it relates to the circumstances and the traits of your consumer.
Right. And just continuing with my tire example, I'm probably just going to not run with it. You saw I almost couldn't even get through circumstance without jumping to solution. I didn't want to get ahead of us. But once I was talking about what the circumstances, they've got to change the tires, immediately the solution is, well, you don't have to change the tires. So in other words, there's such a linking between these things, but it allows you to really identify where one applies to my product and one applies to the consumer, that in terms of here's the circumstance and here's really the solution that applies. That lets you really break it all down and really make sure you identify everything, and then when you take this to communicating your message, that's where the power comes from. The power is not, you take everything that you're going to identify in the core elements, and we're going to eventually take it into the funnel control part of this and into other messaging that we're going to do, and that's where the power really becomes evident.
The other thing I just want to share just on the whole, because as long as we're talking about sort of a bird's eye view as we look at the differences between the two, I just want to share with you all that we've had an opportunity to gain a lot of insight into the process. We've learned a lot from people's feedback, and here's what I can share with you, and this is probably something you know already. There are so many different products and systems out there and trainings that they provide some great information, but without the ability to really ground it into something that you can actually do the work and get results, it's very difficult. I can stand on stage, give a presentation, and someone can say, wow, that was great. But if there isn't something that is actionable and a resource that directly allows you to actually roll up your sleeves, get your mind on and actually do the process, it's very difficult to quantify where that value comes from. And the one thing that we've been hearing from the people that have taken the time to really sit down and recognize that, yes, this is something that helps me tremendously, but if I want to have a successful launch and have a great product sale and effort in any campaign, there is work to be done. And so for anybody who is under the illusion that this is yet another push-button magic software that's going to remove 70% of the process of going through a launch campaign, let me just end any of that myth right now. It's not reality. But I can tell you that for those of you that have taken the time to actually sit through, fill out the core elements, go through the launch campaign elements, they have already shared with us some of their results and just how powerful it has been for them to get the clarity on each step of the process. So what you're going to notice as we go through in some of the future trainings to come in the other sections is just how much this serves as the perfect checklist for you to make sure that you're literally dotting all the I's and crossing the T's as you work through the launch campaign elements. And when I say launch, by the way, I don't necessarily mean it has to be a Jeff Walker 3-stage video and then sales video product launch. It can be just the general grand opening of whatever product you're releasing to the market, and executing a well-managed and effective campaign. So,
the power of this is it goes well beyond well beyond just internet marketing, and certainly, you know, almost any product you can drill in here and get enormous value in terms of how you can position your product, how you're going to sell your product, how you're going to communicate your product to potential customers. I mean, that's really where this all comes from.
Yeah, Mitch and I were actually talking just yesterday, in fact, how you know, the control writer process really becomes almost just a change in thinking when you think about it. When you're thinking about, especially on the position control here and the core elements, when you think about when you're talking to somebody, or even, I mean, what we were joking about was even if somebody's dating and they want to think about, you know, their own personal brand and how they're being seen by their friends or potentially significant others, you know, to think about, you know, really addressing what they want, what the other people may want. Going through this process just gets you clarity on thinking through any process strategically. So it can be applied to really any sales situation, whether it's you know, an interpersonal relationship, whether it's, you know, pitching venture capital. Obviously, we have things and processes that are additionally targeted for each of those mediums, but on a general level, this can get you clarity on any type of sale that you're effectively having as part of the process. So, and right into that, I want to transition to where the two changes are in the core elements tab, and that's with needs and wants. And this is critically important because what happens is you usually have two different dynamics going on when there is a product release and promotion. You have you as the company or the vendor that has created this great product, and based on your experience, you know exactly what the consumer needs. Whether they want to hear it or not, you know what they need that's going to be most effective. The interesting thing, though, is that sometimes there's a disconnect between what they need and what the consumer actually wants. And so when you're thinking about how you're going to be representing the features and benefits of your product, to just think of it independently as just features and benefits, it doesn't tell the full story. What we did here, the big change, is we added the elements of needs and wants, because we believe it is really important to be able to literally wear two separate thinking hats. Thinking as the consumer about what they want, regardless of whether or not it has anything to do with what they really need. I want to know, as a consumer, if I'm a consumer looking in on this, what would I absolutely love for this product to have? What would I love for it to do for me? And so we want to get real clarity on what some of those things are as it relates to the product. Now, juxtapose that with the needs on the actual product side, because despite the fact that you want to be providing the consumers with what they want, you also want to make sure that you are still getting them what they need, whether they know it or not. This is a hugely important distinction, because if you're only just focused on spilling benefits and telling them only what they want to hear, but not really thinking thoroughly about what the product needs to have to deliver those results on the back end, then you're really missing a big part of the picture. Mitch?
Yeah, no, I mean, you covered it perfectly. I mean, I'll just trying to sit here and think about I mean, it's a very straightforward concept, but it's a critically important one that was missing from the original version of Offer Control. And one of the, I'll make a note here, the files from between Offer and Conversion Control and Offer Control, they're not compatible with each other because certain changes in the layout make them incompatible. So you can't cross open them. So just be aware of that. But I think, let me just try and put my tire example into this. So obviously,
before you do that though, Mitch, because that's an important point. But please know though that as when you're exporting your files into the text and the HTML, you can certainly, you know, combine all the text of those documents. So as you're cutting and pasting and preparing final scripts and messaging, you can certainly use the two programs together in that manner. It's just that if we've already had a couple of notes about this, if you're trying to, for example, load the Video Genesis demonstration file inside Offer and Conversion Control, it will not load because those two projects and files are not convertible. So we're going to be continuing to add additional Offer and Conversion Control demo files for you to download, and you'll see all of those resources inside your members portal.
So look, I think it's just a very straightforward concept, and just thinking through my prior example would be, so what the consumer wants in this case is, he's a young 25-year-old wants to go off-road, and he wants these big fat tires with deep grooves so he can get through the mud. But what he really needs, but he can't use those on the road, right? Those are off-road tires only, but when he uses them, road, he doesn't have good traction. They don't go right. He burns through them very quickly. Whatever it is. So what he really needs are these special tires, which have different kinds of grooves that give him all the same benefits that the big ones do. But these special grooves that are in my tire, my special off-road on-road tire has these special grooves that will work just as well in the mud, but they'll also work perfectly well on the road. But right off the bat, he's got an objection. We're not going to talk about it, but right there, this is where the wants and needs. A lot of objections comes right in this area because he thinks he needs these special deep groove tires, but maybe he really needs these other ones. And just a reminder, I'm making this up, so this is literally being made up as we're going through this. But I just want to try to paint the picture of an example so you can start to formulate and understand a better understanding of how to utilize these core elements.
Okay. So underneath that, we've got on the product side, we've got the superior feature and superior benefit. Now, it may be that, and right underneath that, by the way, of course, is features and benefits. So depending on how your mind works and where you're thinking, some people like to just sort of go through a brainstorm exercising of really getting clear on what all the features and benefits are. But sometimes, you know just so clearly what your primary feature is that you can identify the superior feature right off the bat. Obviously, those are the most important, the superior feature and benefit, so we put them up top, but just know that sort of those four boxes all go together as you're brainstorming through your features and benefits. I think we've all been around long enough to know the true definition of each, but just bear in mind that when you're thinking about your benefits, you really want to think about benefits at least a couple of layers deep. What many people tend to do is they make the mistake of sort of illustrating a feature. So let's say, a feature of software might be, multiple tab editing or whatever the case may be. And the benefit to that is that you're not limited to one screen and one structure. Well, that's sort of a benefit that is one layer deep, if you know what I mean. It's not really giving you the end benefit. It's giving you sort of the feature written in a way that sounds a little bit nicer, that sounds a little bit more like a consumer benefit. But what you really want to be thinking about is the benefit of the benefit. In your thinking, you have to go one level deeper. So the fact that I'm not limited to one screen and one particular structure, what does that really mean to me as the consumer? It's not just that I have that. It's that it means I've got much more creative freedom, I've got much more variety to get more effective thinking and more effective brainstorming into my campaign process. And you can take that even deeper. So anyway, so the point in the features and benefits is you don't just want to stick with your first few that come up. You really want to take it a couple of layers deep to think what the true end benefit is. And just a hint, most of the end core benefits are going to have something to do with time, money, and freedom of some way, in some way, shape, or form, or efficiency. So time savings, money increase, or efficiency and general freedom as a matter of living and as a matter of operating. Right. Anything to add there, Mitch?
No, again, superior, again, within the context of your product, as you're working through your features and benefits, you may start to understand your product even better than you originally thought you did. And you may find that, the multiple tab editing is the superior feature of my product. You can just drag these things up and, break it out as far as you can. And as Sean pointed out, you want to drill down on the benefit side, certainly, as far as you can for each. So multiple tab editing would be one feature. On the other side, we're going to have a response to that as far as benefits goes. What are all the benefits of that? And then what are the benefits of the benefits? I always ask that question. What are the benefits of this benefit? And I could probably rattle off 10 right now for multiple tab editing, conceptually what might be benefits for the end user. Not all of them would be the superior benefit necessarily, but certainly there would be lots of benefits and potentially a superior benefit might even come out of that for our software in general.
Right. And what we're going to do, by the way, after we break these out, guys, is we're going to show you an example actually from the very video that we created for the offering conversion control initial pre-release here that you took advantage of. So it'll just be able to ground some of these things in. But we wanted you guys to have like a nice fresh look at a clean software and not get overwhelmed by data and all the text that might be in front of you. But just so you know, if you want to see the examples, we will bring that up once we get through these here. So next we come to ultimate improvement and ultimate outcome. That was another thing that was also changed in terms of the language.
I would just bring up the other software.
Yeah, bring up offer control so they could see the difference there.
Offer control was ultimate improvement and promised land.
Correct. And so although these are just to clarify, because I don't want to add confusion where it's not necessary, they are essentially the same thing. It's just that we changed the dynamic in the language because we thought it would be much more clear. It
was about clarity in this case. We had the spirit feature, spirit benefit. We want to go with ultimate improvement, ultimate outcome, sort of keep that symmetry within the software. And we felt that just the name ultimate outcome, it's just much more on the nose in terms of what it is, what it is you're supposed to be looking for in terms of your product, as opposed to promised land, which is a little more.
Well, Mitch and I are big fans of being what we call in Hollywood on the nose, and that's that, say what you mean so that someone who may not be an expert in the software can see what it is, get a basic help trigger, and understand what they're really trying to get. And so the promised land, while it's kind of a great concept, it needs a little bit of explanation to understand what you're really after. Whereas ultimate improvement and ultimate outcome are pretty straightforward. So the ultimate improvement, again, being on the product side, what is the ultimate improvement that your product is trying to make for you? So in other words, if you're selling anti-acne cream, obviously the ultimate improvement is that the product is going to be responsible for clearing your skin, generating clearer, healthier skin. Whereas on the consumer side, the ultimate outcome is ultimately very much related to that superior benefit. Is what's life going to be like for you, the consumer, now that the product has given you that ultimate improvement? So now that you have this, you no longer have this. Life is totally different. You have all the dates you could ever handle. You have confidence when you're speaking in front of your office and making presentations, whatever the case may be, as it relates to that particular ultimate improvement. It's about the promised land, or the ultimate desired life outcome that improvement provides.
I mean, it's again, it's the same along the same lines. It's just identifying exactly what it is about your product that it really what it ultimately tries to do for the end consumer, and what does that mean to the end consumer? What is it? Not as it necessarily is defined by the product, but in terms of their life beyond the product. Well, that's the ultimate outcome. Beyond the product, what does this mean for them? What does this product do for them beyond when they leave the scope of using your product? What do they have as a change in their life? Like, what is the change that is taking place for them? That's what the ultimate outcome is looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately that brings us to the granddaddy of them all, which is identifying and finding your preeminent distinction. And this, again, as a definition for those that may not have explored the concept deeply, the preeminent distinction is the one thing that when you have identified it, it will render your competition virtually irrelevant. When you have identified this, and some of you may remember from past trainings, especially if you remember from the Genesis live event recordings and the trainings that Mitch and I did there, we used the example of the pizza parlor, the kosher pizza restaurant. That if you ask most people, how many pizza places there are in your town, most of them will say 10, 15, 20, obviously depending on the size of the town you live in. But in the case of the town of which it's not East Brunswick, it is Brunswick, right?
No, it's Highland Park. It's down near here.
That's it, Highland Park. Thank you. Highland Park. If you ask the Orthodox Jewish community how many pizza places there are, their answer is 1, and that's because by decree, it is not permitted to have any other competition in that area for the pizza places. And so what that means to you when you have that type of an only advantage situation, when you have isolated what that is, in this case it was given by religious and town decree, you won't always have that luxury. But when you do, now you can work your marketing and your promotions and your entire business accordingly, because this business doesn't have to talk about 2-for-1 night on Tuesday, just to compete with the competition. Because if anybody is going to want pizza, I guess in some sense you're still competing with the other types of food that people may be in the mood for on any given day. But suffice it to say that this place is packed at many hours of the day, especially at lunch and dinner times.
Right, and it's a place, I've been there, and it's not necessarily the cleanest nor the cheapest. Right, it's oftentimes more expensive than the other options available, but they've got a distinction that their customer base wants. Not only do they want, but they need in this case, because they have to keep kosher, and if they want to have pizza out of their house, they've got to go to a kosher pizza. But that's what it means. But I want to expand the definition of preeminent distinction a little bit here and explain that your preeminent distinction can come from any of your core elements. In other words, in terms of thinking through what your preeminent distinction may be, it may be your feature, your superior feature. It may be what the ultimate improvement provides. It may be the solution is so unique that the solution in and of itself is something a patent would potentially provide someone with a preeminent distinction. It could be options, features in general. I offer more colors than my competitor. Things like that. In other words, the preeminent distinction can come from any numerous place, but generally you're going to find them somewhere on your core elements, because that's where your preeminent distinction is going to most notably sort of define your product, and that's going to oftentimes be where your preeminent distinction lies. Not always, but oftentimes.
Right. So let's give them a few examples of ways that they can find the preeminent distinction. Because once you understand what the concept is and how powerful that is, now you can really start to isolate on different ways that you can use certain questions that you can ask yourself to sort of get at where you might have that unique.
Let's go back to my special tire example, just to give an example. So in terms of the way I would have played that out all the way through, so the superior benefit is it's an on-road, off-road tire that has all the benefits of being on-road and off-road, right? And in this case, we'll just make believe it was the only one. That would be the superior features. The superior feature in this case would be the ability to go on-road and have all the benefits of an on-road tire, and go off-road and have all the benefits of an off-road tire in one tire without swapping out your tires to get those extreme benefits on either side. So now, going down to the preeminent distinction, that would probably be it. It's the only tire that provides this patented, unique groove that allows for you to just drive off-road anytime you want, anywhere. And that sort of paints also the picture of the ultimate outcome, right? How you would want to make the person envision he's on his Jeep and he's on the road and he sees a mountain in the distance, and go off-road anytime. Don't worry about your tires. Again, I'm making it up, but you can just kind of see the way you could market that product concept.
And that also leads you to the first of the questions that we would give to you as you're going through the process. Is think about in my product or service, can I make any claims as to being the only anything? It's you could be a dentist, and maybe that you are the only person who uses a particular type of cleaning equipment in your entire town. So whatever distinction you can make as being the only, however small the detail is. I mean, I could tell you that there's for many of you that have studied marketing, there's the famous campaign, the original, I believe it was Schlitz, was the original campaign that talked about the only or something we use Frost Brewing, or we're the only one to use this process in this way. And the truth of the matter is all the companies use some form of that as a part of making beer. But the way they represented it and the way they called out that one detail, it gave them that preeminent distinction for that particular facet, and it became a very successful marketing campaign. I'm pretty sure it was Schlitz. Feel free to confirm that, anybody, if you remember which campaign it was back.
Before we open this up to the questions and answers part, I do want to. You had something to say, Sean?
Yeah, let's keep going with the questions.
I wanted to tie the preeminent distinction into story and lead into that important.
Let me get the questions out first, because I want people to be able to write the questions, and then let's transition into the story, if it's okay.
I can. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Unless, well, so all right. So question number one is what can I think of about my product or service that is the only in any capacity? Number two, what do I know that my product or service does literally the best, better than anybody else? And by that, I don't mean we just say that we're the best. You hear that all the time in marketing, but how can we quantify that? How can we actually make that tangible? Well, if you've won a very well recognized award or endorsement in your industry, if and it's, for example, if a car has been rated J.D. Power and Associates top-rated consumer model for that particular year, that would be the best. I mean, you could pretty much get away with that in that context. So looking for for awards, for validation, for testimonials, any way that you can really quantify how you are the best at something. If something is revolutionary or groundbreaking or brand new, this is the newest, this is the latest and the greatest. All other things have been working at this level. We have the latest enhancement to this recognized technology that makes it better, faster, or more efficient in some way. So those are some areas that you can start to think about to really jog the questions on preeminent distinction, coupled with what Mitch is going to talk about now, which is as it relates to story.
And we're not going to go into story in detail. I think we're going to save a real full session, live session on story. Probably next time we're going to go into story. But because we're talking about preeminent distinction, you really can't define any of the answers to the correct, deepest answer for your product about your own preeminent distinction is to look at story and to understand that the preeminent distinction oftentimes is going to come out of your story. Like I said, this deserves an entire session, and we'll go into it next time. But where you want to really, as you work through your story, the place you want to look for your preeminent distinction is specifically in the discovery. In other words, what is it about your story where there's a discovery, where there's something special, there's something about your product? Again, the idea of using a story in marketing is the story needs to be extremely closely tied to the product. In other words, it's not just a story of your childhood we're telling here. It's not just a story of a vacation you took. This has got to be a story of how your product came to be the thing that you're about, came to be potentially what it is. How your product was discovered potentially, how your product, how you created it, whatever it is about your product, the story's got to tie closely to the product. And the specific place where when you get your story right, when you know you've got the right story, is when your discovery moment within your story is the discovery in essence of your preeminent distinction. In other words, when those two things are almost the same thing, when you're writing in the story here, that your discovery is, I realized I could set the grooves in such a way on my tire that they would work perfectly on-road and off-road and have all the benefits of all the other tires out there. At that moment, that is now your preeminent distinction.
Correct. So it's what leads to your grounding of what becomes your preeminent distinction. That's right. Right.
And when you can tell that story, and when you can tell a story in such a way that it reveals your preeminent distinction, that's when you know you've got a really powerful story that ties very closely to your product. So and that's all I wanted to say on story today, because it's very important to talk about story in that capacity as it pertains to preeminent distinction, at least.
Right, and we're gonna talk. Story will probably, like Mitch said, will probably be our next training session. We'll do it like this. But as I say this, even before we continue on and bring up the other examples, again, for folks that are waiting on the hot seats and getting that that private one-on-one attention, do not wait, because those things usually fill up. We usually get a ton of requests, as you've all seen. We always have an overflow by the end of the session, and Mike is probably going to be part of some of those. We want to just encourage him to do it. Right now, as you may know, he's in the middle of Traffic Genesis, but we're definitely going to have those guys participating in some way, shape, or form, and we're probably going to have some other guests, special unannounced guests along the way, as we do more and more of these trainings and interactive sessions to help you with various aspects of your campaigns. Mitch and I like unannounced bonuses. We like to throw a lot of that stuff in there, especially as we can tie together these special guests and anyone that can really give you extra value. So,
and as far as schedule goes,
go ahead, Mitch.
As far as schedule goes for these sessions moving forward, as it pertains to them being live, if you're watching it in the portal as training, then obviously this happened potentially a long time ago. But in terms of live, we'll probably be doing these types of trainings will be during the day, and then all of the ones where they're interactive workshops, those will be done in the evening to give people the maximum ability to participate.
Correct, to attend outside of other work hours. But what I was going to say, I don't want to forget, is make sure you do send an email to support@controlwriter.com if you are interested in being on those hot seats, so we can start to reserve our spots and get them. They will be on a first come, first serve. And again, at the end of every one of those interactive sessions, when there's time for some Q&A, we always allow for sort of a rapid hot seat, if you will, on people getting their questions answered. But Mitch, before we close out the training on core elements, let's go ahead and just open that one file. Do you have that one?
I don't think you gave it to me. If I go open here, or maybe I do.
You should. It would be.
I was looking at offer control. That's why. So what we called it.
It's VSL Mike would be one. There was an updated one, but just don't go into influence. All we need is the core elements anyway. That should be it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No. Okay, so here are the core elements of the breakout. Yes.
So just to sort of ground, some of these examples. We're not going to go through every one of these because I think I'm hoping that based on feedback and everything else, you guys are getting enough out of it, at least in terms of what the definitions are. But this was the process that we went through. You know, as you can see, guys, we drink our own Kool-Aid. You know, this is what we use. And what we do when we're working with Mike and Andy, when we do it in ourselves, with some of our other partners, this is the tool that is used as we create any of these, whether it's a video sales letter, a short advertisement, a larger presentation. It's our Control Writer software. This is what we're working with. So
and the video that's currently available for the product, we built it all out in the transaction tab. And I know that the whole script is in this. I just know this because we had made some modifications to the software after we finished this. As Sean mentioned, there is one place you can't click because it'll crash. So like I said, they're not compatible. We'll make changes. But the final version is completely compatible. You don't have to worry about that. That was because we were working on it while it was still in development.
Right. So again, just to use the example, so for product, as we said earlier, just very simple. You know, the product itself is offer and conversion control software, which contains the offer and conversion formula framework. That's it. That's the product. And along with training, we didn't add training, but we did make notes about training and the features. The consumer, you know, digital marketers, small business owners looking for powerful, proven process for putting together sales copy and messaging. This is, I think, an older version of this file, Mitch. We made some changes, so I'm going from what I remember. But again, you know, the solution itself is, you know, helping people to develop clearly defined launch campaigns from start to finish, incorporating both strategic positioning elements. So understanding what we talked about for the brand, these are the core elements we worked on today, along with the actual funnel building and execution through all that funnel control that you see there in the top right. You know, circumstances. Many people, they've bought tons of other training and courses, and they still struggle to get the results. That is a primary circumstance that we come across when we're talking with people, is that people have been spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on training, but they fail to find the resource or the process that really works for them to get the results that they've always been hoping for. And that's why we said when you are rolling up your sleeves and actually doing the work and following it step by step, you know, this is the SOP checklist, the standard operating procedure.
Right, and if you've carefully watched, and after this, it's probably recommended you go carefully watch the offer and conversion control promo video, because as we're going through this, you could start to hear some themes that we brought out in that video. We did it via story, but we're trying to spell out the circumstance because that's what we're selling to. We're selling to people who are in this circumstance. If you go watch that video, it's exactly what it's doing. It's talking about that circumstance as, here's my circumstance, I'm the circumstance, and we're projecting it onto our audience, understanding they're probably in the same circumstance.
Right. And so let's talk about needs and wants, because I think you get the idea. And again, we're not going to read each and every one of these bubbles. But again, what they need versus what they want. The consumer wants, they want validation that the process that they're working on is actually going to be the right process. They've already spent the money. They've bought this, they've tried that, and they're tired of getting the results or not getting the results that they're after. They want some sort of validation that this process for real is going to be the one that's going to help them. Now, what they need is, until they actually reach that level that we've talked about, of that unconscious competence level, where they just don't even have to think anymore about how to execute what they know because they've got thousands of hours of usage and mastery, they need to be sure that they have a successful and repeatable process that they can easily follow for the great results. So what they want and what they need is, the core human want is validation. I want to know that I've finally arrived, and I need someone to help me understand that. But what they need, though, is they need the process that's going to deliver that validation. They need to be shown exactly how to do it themselves. Not how to just wait for the master to show them, but how to step in and do it themselves in a repeatable process that works. And of course, what they want is more conversions, and they want to make more money. And many of them want an easy push-button solution. And so to the extent that we can provide that as a reference guide, we do. But at the end of the day, the last thing we would do for anybody is tell them that to have a multi-million-dollar launch campaign or product campaign of any kind, it's going to be about pushing a few buttons in some new software that's going to be, blacklisted or outlisted in less than 90 days. And this is a trend that you see repeatedly starting now on Facebook. That seems to be the new hot button tool of ID scrapers and all those things. And at some point in time, inevitably, Facebook is going to just wave that big hand and just smack down on all of those little softwares that promise some quick and easy.
But I think it goes back to what our core value of our software is all about. What you just said is, you can get all the scrapers in the world, you can get your message in front of all the people in the world. If you don't have the right message in front of the right person, it's all irrelevant. You're not going to be able to certainly even get their attention. But even beyond that, there's so much more. Once you get the right product in front of the right person, now you have to get the right message and the right funnel in front of that person as well to nurture them all the way through to the point where you have a relationship with them, and there's trust, and there is the ability for them to understand the value equation that's involved here. And this is something very important, is this idea of the value equation. And this goes into the conversion points, which we're not covering today, but the idea is, when the conversion point is when I can measure the value that I'm going to receive against what it's going to cost me. And usually the cost is money, sometimes it's time or otherwise, but in terms of financial transactions, it's a money transaction. I've got X dollars that have a certain value to me, and I'm going to get in return for that money. It's got to be equivalent or better, greater value in exchange. And that's when a transaction happens. This is what we call conversion point. We'll be covering those in the next few weeks. But that's where a conversion point is. And the idea is, this software helps you make sure you build the proper amount of value at that conversion point when you make the offer and you ask for their money, where they can then quantify the whole thing and say, okay, he wants $100, and I know what I'm going to get, and I can now understand the entire value of this and make a decision. Sometimes they're going to decide, it's still not for me. Fine. Most of the time, that's what they're going to decide. But that 20% of the marketplace that you're going after, it's that you want them to be able to say, yeah, okay, I'm in. $100. This is worth more than $100. Of course, I'm going to make this this transaction because I understand the value equation.
Right. So scrolling down again, features and benefits. I'm not going to list and read all those. This is where we just went through and listed a bunch of features. We broke out our features in terms of the two tabs here, the position control versus funnel control. We listed some of the components of each, and of course, the benefits of each. So,
and then I think the more important one, the superiors feature, is we've got help the user identify the precise points when a prospective customer would become paying customers. That's what I was just talking about. And then the second one is about story, identifying the story and linking your story to your message and to your product, which is what I mentioned earlier about story and permanent distinction. So those are the real two powerful parts of this software as far as our positioning goes.
Right, which leads to the superior benefit of the ability to actually think about and develop, sales and marketing campaigns that work quickly, easily, and correctly.
Right. Move it down.
That's the key distinction there. So all the way down to
this just goes through the different features. What we did was we broke. I just think it's how we use the software. We took out position control. We broke it down: core element, story, objections, influence. Final control. We broke it down: lead gen, each one, and then we went through each one and we broke it down. Like, what is the benefit of this? What is the benefit of this? What is the benefit of this? And we just literally broke it out as best we could. Some of this ends up in our messaging. Some of it doesn't, but the point is we now know we got it all in front of us to make our decisions and to create a really powerful marketing message overall.
All right, so Mitch, before we go in and just finish up with preeminent distinction and closing notes, I'm going to open it up one last time for questions. Any final questions you guys have? Because there's that 30-second to a minute delay. So as I'm saying this, a minute probably will have passed by the time you're actually typing in your questions. So start getting your questions in now, because otherwise, once we clear them all out, we will be ending the broadcast for today, and this will be available up in the training portal area that you can access anytime you like. It might not be today, but it certainly will be before the weekend. So
yeah, we'll try and get it done today. We'll try and get it in.
Well, but we're going to try it up.
But to Sean's point, maybe it won't.
Right.
Disclaimer. Okay, fine.
Right. So any questions you guys have, it doesn't have to be on core elements, by the way, folks. If it's anything at all that we've covered, anything on any part of the software, the Q&A section of this training is wide open. So ask whatever you like. But last but not least, our preeminent distinction, the #1 software that provides the ability to build a compelling and relevant story together with a comprehensive sales and marketing campaign. #1 software that allows you to identify and win the precise moments when your prospects could become paying customers. And the only software that contains the core elements of offer and conversion together with the ability to build and integrate a relevant and powerful marketing story and campaign. So those were just some brainstorms that we had along these core elements as it contains. And you could see, again, guys, we weren't just writing, 1 or 2 notes. This is a thorough thinking exercise that so few people fail to do, and the difference between those that are actually doing it, whether on a conscious level or on an unconscious level of competence, they are going through these kinds of thinking processes whether they realize it or not. This is the difference. When you're asking the question, what's the difference between someone doing a multi-million-dollar launch and someone just having really average to mediocre results? It's actually going through and taking the time to think through these elements, with or without outside help. Some people may not be capable of doing this on their own, and so they need software or consultants or other programs to help them go through the process. But make no mistake about it, these things are part of any product campaign, and you need to think them through. I'm getting a lot of thank yous. Let's just see. As far as backup, Roosevelt is asking, as far as backup, how is that handled?
Okay, we've got 2 questions here about this technical question about the software. We'll just address them. So question number 1 is the backup, and the other question is about sharing data. So just a technical question about the software. Under File, you've got Options, and under Options, you have the ability to change folder. So for instance, you could change this folder. I've got it in my Dropbox. So now, if I have a shared Dropbox folder, I could have a shared folder. I could put it in there. And then Sean could have the same folder shared and have access to the same folder, and he would change his software to that location, and then we would both have access to the data. Only really one person could save it at a time, and we would actually, if I hit save and then he's working, he hit save, he'd be overwriting my data. But so you want to obviously communicate with each other. It's not a database. It's a file that if I save it, I'm going to overwrite whatever was there. But there's two cool autosave functions within this. So first of all, if I hit open, you'll notice that there's an autosave file on all of these. So the autosave is every 5 minutes, my data is being saved as I'm going through here. So if I jump back to Core Elements, you'll see everywhere I go there's a save button, a little save icon. If I hit save, it saves the data. I can save it here, but even if I don't, within the software, it will run the save every 5 minutes. Now, for some people, they may not want to save every 5 minutes. So let me pull up my Dropbox and just show you what's going on in the Dropbox, and this will answer your question. Give me 1 second to find the right location. Where are we? So here is a copy of that folder where the files are stored. And you'll notice an auto backups. Now, every time I press save, or the system auto saves it, it takes the file. Let's just say we're working in this one, OCC VSL Mike. It takes this file right now. If I press save right now, it takes this file right now, and it dumps it in the auto backup folder, and it creates a backup, and then moves all the backups 20 deep. So there will be 20 deep of the files that you're working in. So for the last 20 times save has been processed, there's a file. Now, in all likelihood, if you do need to recover one of these, you just have to reach out to support to get instructions. But just be aware that that is available to you. So you got two ways it's being saved. Now, of course, if you're using Dropbox, the great thing is Dropbox is also backing up your local. Instead of it being on your local hard drive, it's now stored in the ether there, so to say, on the World Wide Web. So you have that backup from your own computer itself crashing, which is probably a good idea as well.
Okay, just taking. There's a couple other
so just some technical notes about the software there.
Yep. Just give me 1 second, Mitch. I'm just looking through the list here. Any other questions? Some of these I've been answering sort of along the way. There was one other thing. Let's go back to our main bubbles.
Okay. This is in our software, or do you want to just clear?
No, this is fine. I'm just trying to look and see some of these things. Alice, let's see. Okay, Alice is asking. Okay, I've got the answer. Alice, I'll answer you in just a moment. You'll hear this. You'll probably see my chat first. Sorry for the dead air, guys.
So just in terms of some of the other functionality that just some there's some things that just some limitations with the software. Right now the current limitation is the ability to drag from one tab to another. We just don't have that ability. So the question sometimes comes in, well, how do I take data? Let's say I have got something here and I want to retype it necessarily. So you could just, using the shortcut keyboard, so it's Control-C on Windows or the Mac sign, what is it, the Mac-C to copy, and then I could take it to another tab and I could use Control-V to paste. So a little bit of not ideal, but you can move data around from one tab to another like that. Another thing to watch out for is press save often. If you hit X, there is no undo in the current version, something that will definitely be addressed in all these things will be addressed in the next version of the software for sure. So if you hit undo, there's no redoing. And if something's really, really important, you'd have to go back to hopefully one of the saved backups. Just trying to add some more info about the software while you were.
Right. Yeah, I was just answering. There's some questions about most of you had had taken advantage through one channel, and there's some questions regarding pricing to different channels, whether you've been an original offer control or whether you had it through a different route. So I was just trying to answer that. But just to let you know, right now the retail pricing of and all of you will have gotten this for less. The retail pricing of the software is $297 in 3-pay or one payment of $247, and that's still just the pre-launch price. That price may go up significantly as we continue to build on and expand the program. So this is all the early access benefits for those who have already had it, as a special thank you for people who had been part of the original offer control. We wanted to give you all the expansions that are coming. At a substantial discount, and even just our other ControlWriter customers who use our other family of software, we also wanted to give you a pretty steep discount as well. So I think for today, I think we've covered the core elements fairly thoroughly. I will just I posted a last call for questions. I don't see any others on the list, but I will go ahead and put one last call for questions. Anyone on anything? I'll just wait. wait a minute or so and see if we get any answers, because in text it is real time. But I don't see anything else. But do us a favor, guys. Send your comments, your notes to support if you have questions. Obviously, if you want to be on the hot seats once we start doing those, which is going to be very soon, make sure you reserve your spot. And if you've already got files that you've been working on, you'll want to submit those the day of, so that we can load those up for you and make all our notes and updates right to you in that file, so we can send it to you afterwards. But
and even if you're watching this, even if you're watching the recorded version of this, the plan is to have at least a hot seat session periodically, if not once a month, certainly close to once a month. So you should have the ability to get a hot seat even when the next session of those arises.
Absolutely. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So again, for all those who took time out of your day today to do something different in this experiment, again, send us some feedback. Let us know if you liked it, if you like being over the shoulder for training, and also if there are specific training topics that you want us to cover as we continue to build this out in addition to everything else. Let us know, because we are here to serve you. We're here to make sure that you have no lack of clarity on anything. Clarity is the key word for ControlWriter software. If you can't get clarity through this process, then it's not doing the job that we want it to do for you. So please don't be bashful. Any topics you like, make a suggestion. It may or may not wind up as an entire session, but it will certainly be covered as far as answering the questions and making sure you get your questions answered. So for those of you that were here, thank you so much. For those of you that are going to be watching various segments of this in your training portal, enjoy, and please comment, and let us know what else we can do to serve you. So
thank you for helping us today.
Was that?
Thank you for participating today.
Okay. Sorry, we're talking over each other. We do that sometimes. But anyway, everyone, thanks so much. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you on the next training.